Intolerance and bigotry based on a person's religious belief are repugnant, and they are all too common in the world today. Discrimination and acts of violence based on a person's religion are not only repugnant, they are a direct violation of human rights. The question we all face is, how do we move forward? Since 1999, Pakistan, on behalf of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, began introducing resolutions at the Human Rights Council, then the Commission on Human Rights, arguing that Islam must be shielded by law from unfair associations with terrorism and human rights abuses. The resolutions call on states to put in place legal mechanisms that prevent individuals from engaging in the expressions of ideas that insult religions or can be seen as insulting to religions, particularly Islam, under the premise that such expression amounts to incitement to hatred, which is a permissible restriction on free speech under Article 20 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The resolutions have passed each year at the Human Rights Council and more recently here in New York at the General Assembly, although by an increasingly narrow margin, as human rights groups, freedom of expression organizations, the UN's own system of independent experts, and UN member states have expressed opposition to the premise that legal restrictions on free expression are either an effective or an acceptable means of promoting religious tolerance. The resolutions are non-binding, but they lend legitimacy and credibility to the premise behind the resolutions and to the existing blasphemy or defamation of religions laws that are already in use in many of the countries supporting the resolutions. Moreover, in addition to the introduction of the annual resolutions, its sponsors are also seeking to incorporate the concept into international law itself, likely as an additional protocol to the ICERD, or the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. The text of the resolutions and in the proposals for the optional protocol contains very appealing language, steeped in standard human rights values like dialogue, like harmony, promoting peace. These are all good things. However, attempts to create international law regarding the vague notion of defamation of religions, as well as attempts to criminalize such offenses through laws within a society, in our view, do not address these real problems. In fact, as our report examining the impact of existing laws in a range of countries shows, such attempts, in fact, exacerbate the problem, limiting the ability of individuals to raise concerns, to raise questions, even to raise criticisms, whether criticisms are constructive or not in their intent, only breeds greater intolerance. Stifling the ability of people to speak their minds, particularly under vague guidelines of over what is acceptable and what is not, automatically leads to self-censorship, particularly among the most moderate voices. And it tends to ensure that only those with the most radical views are those that are willing to speak out. Yet legal restrictions on speech do not only undermine freedom of expression, they necessarily impact intellectual, academic, religious freedom. Human beings cannot think, they cannot learn, they cannot worship without the ability to express their opinions in addition to just having them. Moreover, such attempts place the sole responsibility of judging what is defamatory and what is acceptable into the hands of governments and other power holders. Given the highly subjective nature of these laws, the potential for arbitrary or overly broad application, particularly at the expense of minority or other vulnerable groups, is all too high. International human rights law was built on the premise of protecting the rights of individuals or groups of individuals. The covenants and the treaties to which most UN member states are parties and which provide protections for freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom from racial or other forms of discrimination, including religious discrimination, are intended to ensure the right of individuals to have and express their beliefs and to be free from discrimination on the basis of who they are, where they come from, what they look like, and what they believe. But they are not, and they should not, be set up to protect beliefs themselves, even such deeply held and passionate beliefs as religious beliefs. Protecting the rights of people to have and express their beliefs is very easy to do when the individuals fall within a majority. It becomes much harder to do when an individual's beliefs fall within a minority. It becomes harder still when those beliefs shock or offend the majority views. But the most vulnerable are those for whom human rights protections were set up in the first place. As much as we may not like it, being shocked or being offended is not the same as having our human rights violated. This is true even in regards to comments made towards individuals for whom international law is established to protect. It absolutely holds true for ideas and beliefs which international law is not designed to protect. The UN's own independent experts, including the special rapporteurs on freedom of religion or belief, on freedom of expression, and on contemporary forms of racism, xenophobia, and related intolerance, have all clearly and repeatedly supported this position. In a joint statement, the former special rapporteurs on freedom of religion and racism explained, I think very eloquently, defamation of religions may offend people. It may hurt their feelings, but it does not necessarily or directly result in a violation of their rights, including the right to freedom of religion. Freedom of religion primarily confers a right to act in accordance with one's religion, but it does not bestow a right for believers to have their religion protected from all adverse comment. Where does this leave us in terms of dealing with the very real issue of discrimination, acts of violence, and hate crimes against people on the basis of their religious beliefs? Freedom House did not produce this report to downplay these problems. It did not produce this report to dismiss the need for more action, not only on behalf of states, but on behalf of cultural and religious leaders and civic leaders. We did produce this report to demonstrate that blasphemy laws, however well-intended, are not part of the solution.